Don't look at him directly.
Don't look at him in the eye.
The guard beside Alicia hissed, his grip on her arm just shy of painful. The hallway stretched before them like a throat ready to swallow her whole, all black marble and recessed lighting that made everything feel like a funeral home. Don't ask questions. Mr. Jaw doesn't answer to anyone. And whatever you do, another guard added from her other side, don't let him see you're scared. He can smell fear like blood in the water. Alicia's throat tightened, but she forced her voice steady. Is there anything he doesn't hate? The first guard's jaw clenched. Jokes. Don't make jokes. Don't smile, don't cry. Just do what you're told and maybe you'll survive the night. The word survive echoed in Alicia's mind as her worn sneakers squeaked against the polished floor. She'd been dragged from her aunt's apartment 3 hours ago, thrown into a black SUV with tinted windows so dark she couldn't see the city passing by. No explanations, no chance to say goodbye. Just her uncle's voice on a crackling phone call. You'll work for Mr. Jaw now. It's already been arranged. Don't embarrass the family. The family. As if they'd ever been anything but a burden to each other. The penthouse was suffocating in its luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a city that glittered like broken glass, and every surface screamed money, the kind of wealth that came from blood and shadows. Alicia had heard the stories. Everyone had. Jahajun, the ghost king of the underworld, the man who controlled half the city's ports, laundering operations, and protection rackets. They said he was untouchable. They said he was merciless. They said he once made a man disappear for looking at him wrong during a business meeting. Too soon, they stopped before a set of double doors that looked like they belonged in a corporate office, all brushed steel and frosted glass. One guard knocked twice. The girl is here to see Mr. Jaw, he announced to whoever was inside. There was a pause, then a voice, cold and clipped. Send her in. The guards exchanged a glance. She's not really his type, one muttered. Too plain, too mouthy looking. He's gonna send her back before the hour's up, the other agreed. He always does. Heat crawled up Alicia's neck, but before she could snap back, the doors swung open. The guards shoved her forward, and she stumbled into the room, catching herself before she could fall flat on her face. The doors clicked shut behind her with a finality that made her stomach drop. The office was massive, all dark wood and leather, with monitors covering one wall showing security feeds from what looked like warehouses, clubs, and street corners. But Alicia barely noticed any of it, because there, silhouetted against the wall of windows, was Jahajun, in a wheelchair. The most feared man in the city, the crime lord who supposedly ruled with an iron fist and bodies left in his wake, couldn't walk. Alicia's mind went blank. This had to be wrong. This had to be some kind of trick, a test, a trap. But the wheelchair was real, sleek and modern, and the man sitting in it was watching her with eyes so dark they looked black in the dim light. You're staring, he said, his voice like gravel and silk. I was told you'd been given instructions. Alicia snapped her gaze down, her heart hammering. Sorry, You expected something different. It wasn't a question. He rolled forward, the wheelchair's wheels barely making a sound on the hardwood. Everyone does. Disappointment is a common first impression. I'm not disappointed, Alicia said before she could stop herself. I'm just surprised. Surprised. He stopped a few feet away, and she could feel his gaze on her like a physical weight. Is that what we're calling shock these days? Alicia risked a glance up. Jahajun was younger than she'd expected, maybe early 30s, with sharp features that would have been handsome if they weren't set in such a permanent expression of cold calculation. His dark hair was pushed back from his face, and he wore an expensive black suit that probably cost more than her aunt's rent for a year. But it was his eyes that caught her, dark and bottomless, like he could see straight through every lie she'd ever told. I don't know what I'm doing here, Alicia admitted, because lying seemed pointless when he was looking at her like that. Your uncle owes my organization $200,000, Hajun said flatly. He offered you as collateral until he can pay. You'll work as my personal assistant and caretaker until the debt is settled. The room tilted. Caretaker? I require help with certain tasks. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Medication schedules, physical therapy appointments, meal coordination. You'll also handle my daily schedule and any administrative work I assign. I'm not a nurse, Alicia said, her voice coming out smaller than she intended. No, but you can follow instructions, organize documents, and keep your mouth shut about what you see and hear. That's all I need. He wheeled past her toward the desk, moving with a practiced ease that suggested he'd been in the chair for a while. Your quarters are through that door. You'll start immediately. Alicia turned to see a door she hadn't noticed before, partially hidden in the wood paneling. And if I refuse? Hajun didn't look up from the tablet he'd picked up. Then your uncle's debt comes due in full, tonight, with interest. I understand he has a daughter, your cousin, 12 years old. I'm sure she'd make an excellent addition to one of my clubs, once she's old enough. Ice flooded Alicia's veins. You wouldn't. I would. He finally looked at her, and there was nothing human in his expression. This world doesn't run on mercy, Miss White. It runs on debts and payments. Your uncle made his choice. Now you make yours. Alicia's hands clenched into fists at her sides. She thought of her cousin Maya, bright-eyed and still believing the world could be good. Thought of her aunt, already worn down by life and bad men. Thought of herself, trapped between impossible choices. Fine, she said, the word tasting like ash. I'll do it. Good. Hajun turned back to his tablet, already dismissing her. Your first task is in the filing cabinet against the far wall. Organize the contents alphabetically by client name and date. I want it done by morning. Alicia crossed to the cabinet and pulled open the first drawer. Her breath caught. It was chaos. Hundreds of files thrown in with no order, papers sticking out at angles, some folders torn or stained. It would take hours, maybe all night. Behind her, she heard the quiet whir of the wheelchair. She glanced over her shoulder to see Hajun watching her, his expression unreadable. This is a test, she said. Everything is a test, he replied. Get to work. The hours blurred together. Alicia pulled file after file, reading names and dates until her eyes burned. Shipping manifests, business licenses, property deeds, all legitimate on the surface, but she wasn't stupid. She knew what she was looking at. Shell companies. Fronts. Money moving through so many channels it would be impossible to trace. Around midnight, she found a folder with her uncle's name on it. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Loan agreements, payment schedules, all stamped with red overdue marks. And there, at the bottom, a note in sharp handwriting. Collateral offered. Niece Alicia White, age 24. Terms accepted. Her vision blurred. Her uncle had sold her like she was nothing, like she was just another asset to liquidate. You're crying. Alicia jumped, not having heard the wheelchair approach. She quickly wiped her eyes, trying to shove the folder back into place. I'm not, she lied. You are. Hajun's voice was closer now, right behind her. What did you find? Nothing. Don't lie to me. There was steel in his voice now. I can have you dragged back to your uncle's apartment in pieces if you... It's my uncle's file. Alicia cut him off, her voice breaking. I found my uncle's file. I just wanted to see how much he sold me for. Silence stretched between them. Then Hajun said quietly, 200,000, but your services are valued at 50,000 a year, plus room and board. 4 years if he never pays. Longer if he accrues more debt. 4 years. 4 years of her life, gone. Alicia felt something inside her crack. Keep going, Hajun said, rolling back toward his desk. You're not done. She wanted to scream, wanted to throw the files at him, wanted to run, wanted to do anything but stand there and take it. But Maya's face flashed in her mind, and she swallowed the rage down, turned back to the cabinet, and kept working. By the time dawn light started creeping through the windows, Alicia had organized every single file. Her back ached, her fingers were paper-cut and cramping, and she was pretty sure she'd never been this exhausted in her life. But it was done. Hajun hadn't spoken to her again all night. He'd worked at his desk, making calls in Korean that Alicia couldn't understand, typing on his laptop, occasionally wheeling over to the wall of monitors to watch the security feeds. Now, as the sun rose, He finally rolled over to inspect her work. He opened drawer after drawer, flipping through files with quick efficiency. Alicia held her breath. "You flagged 3 discrepancies," he said, pulling out files she'd marked with sticky notes. Yes. There were duplicate entries, and one file had payment dates that didn't match the contract terms. I thought you should know. Hajun studied the files, then looked at her. Really looked at her, for the first time since she'd entered. "One of these discrepancies is in your uncle's file. You could have hidden it. Could have bought him more time." Alicia met his gaze, too tired to be afraid anymore. "I could have. But then you would have found it eventually, and it would have been worse for everyone. I'm not going to lie for a man who sold me." Something flickered in Hajun's expression, too fast for her to read. He closed the drawer. "Go to your quarters. Sleep. Be back here by noon." Alicia didn't need to be told twice. She stumbled through the door he'd indicated earlier, finding a small but clean bedroom with an attached bathroom. She collapsed onto the bed fully clothed and was asleep before her head hit the pillow. She woke to someone shaking her shoulder. Alicia jolted upright, disoriented, to find a woman in a crisp suit standing over her. "It's 11:45, the woman said in accented English. "Mr. J wants you presentable. Shower. These are your work clothes." She gestured to a neat stack on the dresser. Simple black slacks, a white blouse, practical flats. "Be in his office in 15 minutes. The woman left before Alicia could respond. She dragged herself to the shower, letting the hot water wake her up, trying not to think about how her entire life had been turned upside down in less than 24 hours. The clothes fit perfectly, which was somehow more unsettling than if they hadn't. Like Hajun had known exactly what size she wore before she even arrived. She made it back to the office with 2 minutes to spare. Hajun was on the phone, speaking rapid Korean, and he gestured for her to sit in the chair across from his desk without breaking his conversation. Alicia sat, trying to decipher anything from his tone. He sounded angry, or maybe that was just how he always sounded. When he finally hung up, he turned to her. "From now on, you'll manage my daily schedule. I have physical therapy 3 times a week, business meetings every afternoon, and medication that needs to be taken at specific times. You'll coordinate with my security team for transportation, prepare briefing documents for meetings, and screen my calls. I don't know anything about. You'll learn." He slid a tablet across the desk. "Everything is in there. Passwords, contact lists, my calendar. Study it. I expect you to be competent by tomorrow." Alicia took the tablet, feeling the weight of it like a chain. "And if I make a mistake, then you'll fix it." His eyes were cold. "I don't accept excuses, Miss White. I accept results." The days that followed were a blur of impossible tasks and constant surveillance. Hajun tested her relentlessly. He'd ask her to find documents in 5 minutes that should take 20. He'd change his schedule without warning and expect her to adapt instantly. But slowly, grudgingly, a routine emerged. Alicia learned that Hajun took his medication at 8 a.m., noon, and 8 p.m., pills she suspected were for nerve damage from the poisoning. She learned that he had physical therapy on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays with a therapist who never spoke and always left looking grim. She learned that Thursday nights he had video calls with distributors in Korea and that he preferred his coffee black with exactly 1 sugar cube. She also learned that despite his cold exterior, Ja Hajun was brilliant. She watched him negotiate a territory dispute between 2 rival gangs with such surgical precision that both sides walked away thinking they'd won. Watched him restructure a money laundering operation on the fly when federal agents started sniffing around one of his fronts. Watched him play 3 moves ahead in every conversation, every decision. It was during one of those late nights, when Alicia was organizing shipping manifests, while Hajun worked through a backlog of encrypted messages, that she heard other guards talking in the hallway outside. "Waste of space, if you ask me. Just sitting there like some kind of—" "Shut up," another voice hissed. "He'll hear you." "So what? It's true. What kind of boss can't even stand up to face his enemies? We should have moved on months ago. Found someone who can actually—" Alicia was on her feet before she knew what she was doing, crossing to the door and yanking it open. The 2 guards jumped, going for their weapons. "He can hear you. Alicia said coldly. And so can I. You want to talk about your boss like that? Do it somewhere he's not paying you to guard his life. The guards stared at her like she'd grown a second head. One of them sneered. What are you, his girlfriend now? Gonna protect him? I'm gonna do my job, Alicia shot back, which is more than you're doing, standing around gossiping like teenagers. Alicia. She turned. Hajun had wheeled to the doorway, his expression unreadable. Get back to work, he said quietly. The guards scattered. Alicia stepped back into the office, her heart pounding. She'd just risked everything defending a man who saw her as nothing but a debt payment. Hajun rolled past her without a word, returning to his desk. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, so quietly she almost missed it. Thank you. Alicia looked up, but he was already focused on his screen again, as if he hadn't said anything at all. But something had shifted. Over the following weeks, Hajun began to change around her. Small things at first. He'd ask her opinion on scheduling conflicts instead of just telling her what to do. He'd explain the context of meetings before they happened, trusting her with information that could get her killed if she shared it. Once, when she brought him lunch, he'd actually looked surprised, as if he'd forgotten people did things like that. You didn't have to, he'd said. You haven't eaten since yesterday, she'd replied. I'm not letting you pass out on my watch. He'd eaten the food. All of it. It was around that time that Alicia started noticing the strange incidents. Files she'd organized would be in different places the next morning. Her schedule would have mysterious changes she didn't remember making. And Hajun's sister Mina, who visited every few days with a bright smile and concern that felt just a shade too performative, always seemed to be around when these things happened. You must be the new assistant, Mina had said the first time they met, looking Alicia up and down with an expression that was friendly on the surface but calculating underneath. My brother goes through them so quickly. I hope you last longer than the others. Others? Alicia had asked. Oh, didn't he tell you? You're the 7th assistant this year. Mina's smile widened, but I'm sure you'll be different. The 7th. Alicia had filed that information away, along with the way Mina's eyes had lingered on Hajun's medication bottles. But it was one late night, 3 weeks into her employment, that Alicia's entire understanding of the situation shattered. She'd been working in the office, updating files, while Hajun took a call in the next room. The door was partially open, and she could hear his voice, tense and sharp. The call ended, and she heard him sigh, a rare sound of exhaustion. And then she heard footsteps, not wheels. Footsteps. Alicia froze. Slowly, carefully, she leaned to the side to see through the crack in the door. Hajun was standing, walking across the room to pour himself a drink from the bar cart, his movements stiff but steady. He rolled his shoulders, grimacing, then downed the whiskey in one swallow. Alicia's mind reeled. The wheelchair was a lie. Or not a complete lie. She'd seen him struggle with mobility, seen the pain, medication, seen the physical therapy. But he could walk, had been able to walk, maybe for weeks or months, which meant everything else might be a lie too. She pulled back, returning to her work with shaking hands. When Hajun wheeled back into the main office 5 minutes later, she didn't look up, didn't say a word. But her heart was racing, and she knew, absolutely knew, that he was watching her, waiting to see if she'd caught him. She said nothing. Not that night, not the next day, not ever. Because if the wheelchair was part of some elaborate game, some test to expose traitors or enemies, then she didn't want to be the one who failed it. But the knowledge sat heavy in her chest, changing everything. She started watching more carefully after that, noticing the way Hajun positioned himself, always with his back to a wall, always where he could see every entrance. The way he'd sometimes let his guard drop around her when he thought she wasn't looking, exhaustion bleeding through the cold mask. The way he flinched, just slightly, when Mina hugged him goodbye. And she started to see past the monster everyone feared to the man underneath. The man who'd been poisoned by someone he trusted. The man who couldn't let anyone close because closeness meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant death. One night, after a particularly brutal business meeting where Hajun had to threaten a supplier who was skimming product, Alicia found him staring out at the city lights, his jaw tight. Why don't you trust anyone? she asked before she could stop herself. Hajun was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, 6 months ago, I trusted my second-in-command with everything. Business, security, my life. He was my friend. We grew up together. Marcus Chen? Alicia said, remembering the name from the files. Yes. Hajun's voice was flat. He poisoned me. Nearly killed me. The paralysis, the nerve damage, it should have been permanent. But he claimed at his trial that he was following orders, that someone else planned it, used him. I've never found out who. And that's why the wheelchair, Alicia said carefully. Why you let everyone think you're still vulnerable. He turned to look at her, and for once his eyes weren't cold. They were tired, haunted. If I let them see I'm recovering, whoever orchestrated it will strike again. This way, they think I'm broken, manageable. They'll get sloppy. That's why you test everyone. Yes. And me? Alicia met his gaze. Am I a test too? Hajun wheeled closer. Everyone's a test, Miss White. The question is whether you pass or fail. Something hot and dangerous coiled in Alicia's chest. Anger, maybe, or something worse. And if I get tired of being tested, then you leave. His voice was soft, almost gentle, and somehow that made it worse. But we both know you won't. Not while your family's debt hangs over your head. He was right, and they both knew it. But as Alicia watched him wheel away, she realized with a sinking feeling that the debt wasn't the only thing keeping her there anymore. Over the next weeks, the line between captor and captive blurred. Hajun began teaching her about the business, explaining the intricate web of operations that kept his empire running. Alicia found herself fascinated despite herself, seeing the chess game of it all. When a vendor dispute threatened to turn violent, she suggested a compromise that satisfied both parties and saved Hajun $50,000. He'd looked at her with something almost like respect. They fell into a rhythm. Late nights working side by side, sharing meals that started as necessity and became something else. Conversations that went beyond business, about books, about the city, about lives they'd lived before this strange intersection. Moments when their hands would brush reaching for the same file, and neither would pull away immediately. Alicia tried to ignore the way her pulse jumped when Hajun looked at her. Tried to forget that he was a criminal, that she was collateral, that this could never be anything real. But the heart was a stupid, treacherous thing. It was Hajun who finally acknowledged it, late one night when they were alone in the office. I feel something, he said abruptly, not looking at her. For you. I don't know what it is. I don't trust it. Alicia's breath caught. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm tired of pretending I don't. He turned to face her, and the vulnerability in his expression made her chest ache. But I can't. I don't know if it's real or if you're just patient enough to wait me out. Everyone wants something, Alicia. Everyone has an angle. Not everyone, she said softly. Especially you. Your uncle's dead. Forget my uncle. The words burst out of her, hot and fierce. I'm here, aren't I? I've had dozens of chances to betray you, to steal, to run. I haven't. What more do you need? I don't know, Hajun admitted, and he sounded lost. I don't know what enough looks like anymore. They stared at each other across the space of the desk, the city glittering behind them like a promise or a threat. Then Hajun's phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He looked down, and his expression shuttered closed again. There's a problem with the downtown shipment, he said, his voice back to business. I need to handle it. And just like that, the walls were back up. But something had changed. Alicia felt it in the way Hajun watched her now, not with suspicion, but with something hungry and uncertain. Felt it in the way he'd started leaving doors unlocked, as if daring her to run. Felt it in the weight of all the things they weren't saying. Then the real test began. It started small. Cash left on the desk. $500, then $1,000, then $5,000. Alicia ignored it every time. Fake phone calls where Hajun pretended to discuss confidential information, waiting to see if she'd leak it. She never did. Planted. Evidence suggesting she'd been meeting with his rivals. Alicia confronted him directly, demanding to know what game he was playing. I need to know, he'd said, his voice rough. I need to be sure. Sure of what? Alicia had demanded. That I'm not the one who poisoned you? I wasn't even here 6 months ago. Sure that you're different, he'd shot back. That this, whatever this is, isn't just another trap. The tests got worse after that. More elaborate, more invasive. And then Mina started visiting more frequently, always with a sympathetic smile and a poisonous suggestion. I heard there was an issue with the accounts, she'd say to Hajun while Alicia was in earshot. Are you sure Alicia isn't... I'm not saying she is, but Uncle's debt, and she has access to everything. Or that rival gang that's been causing trouble? I heard they have someone on the inside. You should probably look into everyone's communications, just to be safe. Every time, Alicia could see Hajun's face close off a little more, could see the paranoia creeping back in. After a particularly brutal week, where Hajun had barely spoken to her except to give orders, Alicia finally snapped. She found him in his office late at night, reviewing security footage, probably looking for evidence that she was betraying him. If you can't trust me now, she said, her voice shaking with fury and hurt, then you never will, and I can't keep living like this, waiting for the next test, the next trap. Either you believe me or you don't. Make a choice. Hajun looked at her, his expression unreadable. It's not that simple. Yes, it is, Alicia said. You're just too scared to admit it. She left him there, returning to her room and slamming the door. She didn't cry, wouldn't let herself cry, but her hands were shaking as she changed for bed, exhausted and wrung out. She was almost asleep when she heard the knock on her door. Alicia froze. It was past midnight. Hajun never came to her quarters, never crossed that line. She opened the door. A man stood there, not Hajun. This man was younger, with softer features and warm eyes. He wore casual clothes, and when he smiled, it reached all the way to his eyes in a way Hajun's never did. Hi, he said gently. I'm Taeyang, Hajun's cousin. I'm sorry to bother you so late, but I wanted to meet the woman who's been taking care of my cousin. Alicia blinked, caught off guard. It's fine. Did he send you? No, he doesn't know I'm here. Taeyang's smile turned rueful. He likes to keep me away from the business, says I'm too soft for this world, but I worry about him, and I wanted to meet you. Why? Because you're still here. Taeyang leaned against the doorframe, his posture relaxed and open. Most people don't last a month with Hajun. He's brilliant, but he's also impossible. The fact that you've stayed, that you've put up with his paranoia and his tests, it says something. Alicia felt herself relaxing despite herself. There was something disarming about Taeyang, a warmth that Hajun never showed. He's not that bad. He's terrible, Taeyang said, but there was affection in his voice. And he doesn't deserve someone like you. The words hung in the air. Alicia's pulse kicked up, warning bells ringing somewhere in the back of her mind. What do you mean? Taeyang stepped closer, his voice dropping to something intimate and concerned. You know what I mean. You've been here long enough to see what this life is. The violence, the paranoia, the constant testing. You